Now that we have seen part 1 and part 2 of the IELTS examination, let's move on to part 3. A quick recap of part 1 and part 2. Part 1 is just a general introduction between the examiner and the candidate. You have just a normal topic about your home, your hobbies, your personal views. And in part 2, you are given a cue card from which you will have to speak for a few minutes, following which you have 2 or 3 follow-up questions by the examiner. Moving on to part 3. In part 3, the examiner and the candidate have a general discussion about the topic that is being mentioned in the cue card. It's not just the general discussion which they have, because that happens in the first round itself, the first part. In the third part, you have a discussion about the topic that was presented to you in the cue card. What sort of discussions can happen? Possibly. Let's check. Let's move on to the first question. Which is the better place for animals? A zoo or a forest? Why? So this question will probably be related to the topic that was given in your cue card. Okay, so part 3, you're going to have a discussion based on the issues related to the topic that was mentioned in the cue card. Let's move on to the possible answer. I think a forest is better than a zoo for animals. Forests are natural habitats for animals where they live in freedom. Whereas zoos are man-made structures where animals live in captivity. Okay, so that can be an answer for this question. Which is the better place for animals, a zoo or a forest, and why? The question itself is brief enough, okay? So it is asking you your opinion and asking you to justify the same. So I think a forest is better than a zoo for animals. I have given my answer. I haven't justified it still. So forests are natural habitats for animals where they live in freedom. This is my justification. And I'm comparing it, the difference between the animals living in a forest and the animals living in a zoo. Whereas zoos are man-made structures where animals live in captivity. So probably your topic on the cue card would have been based upon the animals or the zoos, whatever it is. So based on your particular topic, you are asked a follow-up question. Of course, in part 2, you have follow-up questions, but in part 3, you have general questions about the topic that was presented to you in the cue card. Okay, so you will have issues related to that topic. So this is one such example. Let's move on to the next example now.